some things that might not seem traumatic to some people will be traumatic to others, and people are triggered. People are sensitive, and understanding the effects of trauma will lead us, I think, to a world with better understanding of each other, because we've all got our own things going on, and if we can learn to look at people instead of saying what's wrong with you, and start saying, well, what happened? What happened with you? And I think that when we get to that place, we'll ultimately be living in a more, a better tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the World Class Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Pierre Monice, and we have an amazing guest. I'm super excited. Not only do I have a friend of mine, but someone I really look up to and an amazing work he's doing. And remember, here at the World Class Leadership Podcast, we're here to inspire you to move from being a follower to being an impactful agent of change in your community. And our guest today, Cleveland, is doing just that. So Cleveland, why don't you introduce yourself and the work that you do to the audience today?
Cleveland here. We're excited. Thank you for having me here, and I'm very happy to be here. But yes, I am a boxing coach, and more specifically, I'm a trauma-informed boxing coach. And I created a mental health and boxing system that was designed to help people, gain the therapeutic benefits, all of them, although they squeeze all the goodness that they can out of their boxing sessions. So yeah, I call it the Healing Myths Intentional Boxing Training System, and we're gonna reform the fitness industry. We're gonna go and we're gonna get more companies to become trauma informed. So we're super excited about that.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we're going to dig into that. But before we do so, just to give our audience an opportunity to get to know a little bit more about you, I'd like to start off with this question. We all like to vacation. And if you could vacation in one spot, in one location for all of your vacation days, what location would that be and why?
That one's a pretty easy one.
Okay.
Miami. Like that's the reason why I live here. It's I fell in love with this city. I came here a couple of times back, I think in 2018, for a couple of different conventions, and I always thought I would come back. And when I got the opportunity to come down here and live here full time, I did not hesitate. So yeah, Miami, and I'm not going anywhere.
Man, that's a major life cheat code. You are living where you can vacation. So you have the best of both worlds there. Good stuff. Good stuff. I'm not mad at you.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm a little jealous, but it's all good. So Cleveland, the work that you do, man, not only, have you explained it to me, I've been able to participate in it. And, it's an interesting combination, boxing and mental health. I'll be honest, at least for me, I'm not sure of others, I don't typically, think of the two going hand in hand. So what made you kind of decided to attack it and approach it that way? Or maybe something from your kind of experience kind of led you to saying, you know what, this is a gap and I need to try to address it.
yeah, basically, in 2009, I was dealing with, it's like right a couple, maybe it was maybe a year or two after high school, and I was kind of looking for purpose in my life, and I was getting depressed, and I was anxious. I had no idea, what it was that I was going to do, and I kind of fell into this depression, and I knew something was wrong, right? I was like, okay, this isn't normal for me to not want to be social, just sit around, do nothing. So I went to therapy. I didn't want to feel the way that I was feeling. So I went to therapy. And while I was going to therapy, the therapist noticed that I was, competitive and driven, and I really probably needed to be in sport. And, he suggested I try boxing. And I noticed very soon after, like the exercises that I was learning in therapy and the exercises I was learning in boxing kind of overlapped in from the standpoint of emotional regulation and decision making and those different kinds of those overlaps that happen when it comes to sports performance and, everyday, coping mechanisms and emotional control, emotional regulation. So those things kind of blended together very nice to me. And, it changed my life. So I created the system off of the things that I learned so I could share this with as many people as possible.
Excellent, excellent. And I want to applaud you because I can imagine, going from that mental state you were in to say, I need to speak to someone. That's not really common. What was that impetus? And maybe you could share some encouragement for someone who's thinking about it, but, society doesn't really talk about, especially, as a male, to say, what, if you need help, speak to somebody. Kind of what got you to that point?
Well, that's a really good question. And the thing was, the way that I was feeling was more dangerous to me than asking for help.
Mm,
It became either something happens now or something's gonna happen now. You know what I mean?
got it.
That kind of situation where you just kind of have to decide where, do you want to continue to live your life the way that it feels right now, or do you want to find a way to, process the trauma and, understand the whys that, why you feel the way that you feel. And that was it for me. I had to. I saw it on TV or something, but
Yeah, yeah.
the idea that somebody else could help me, that wasn't hard. That wasn't a hard decision for me.
Excellent, excellent. That's amazing. And I know, by from personal experience going through your program, it's not just hitting a bag and learning to box, going through the technique, but nutrition played a role. I was super impressed where you had made me keep a food log, and just looking at one day of my diet or 2 days, you're like, all right, you're stressed, Pierre. You need to do something different. So tell me about the relationship with food and our mental health.
Well, basically, it's more so about awareness
Okay.
and that piece. And I feel like your appetite and your diet is very much um, connected to where you are emotionally, right?
Hmm.
But I think one of the things is like a lot of leaders, executives in the world, like they start their days with just coffee, with just some sort of, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And to me, that right there says something about your emotional state. You know what I mean? Like if you're not starting the day with like a meal and some water, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how are you really treating yourself? Like you're going straight to a stimulant, straight to a diuretic. You're depleting yourself, in order to, you know, pick yourself up to go after what it is that you need to go after. And said, it's more so about the awareness, you
Hmm.
know what I mean? That awareness. And that's the thing that changed everything for me when it came to, diet, lifestyle, boxing, emotions, all those things, they went together and it all started from the point of self-awareness. That's where we have to start. Once you're self-aware, then you can start to make choices, better choices to bring you to
Hmm.
yourself to a better state.
Hmm. And I was very much guilty of, let me start my day, with that cup of coffee. And I'm not sure where it started from, but it's almost just the thing you do, right? You can't get going. And you're right, that awareness, once I realized, hold on, the first thing I'm doing is grabbing a cup of coffee. Let me try to be a lot more self-aware and do better in that realm. And I appreciate, you calling me out on that. And I'm able to even spread that awareness to others. Now, Cleveland, you mentioned specifically leaders, right? So talk to me about, from your experience, people in corporate America, people in their daily life. What kind of success stories have you seen once people realize, hey, they're aware of what they're eating, they're addressing their traumas, and going through your program. What has it done? What have been some of the benefits?
I might sound like a broken record, but the biggest benefit is just being a soundboard for people. The biggest thing that people don't recognize is what they're doing as abnormal. Like it's not normal to wake up in the morning and go to a stimulant first thing. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and most people don't know that because it's kind of popular. in our culture. And it's like, well, did you drink any water before you put that in your system? And that's the main thing is that I help people train their introspection muscles. The questions that say, well, why do I do this? Why, like, and is this normal? And I think I think it's a really, really big question is because all we know is, what our environment was like. And it takes other perspectives, from other people looking in and say, hey, well, maybe this isn't, the best for your health and your well-being. Maybe something else might, might be a little bit better for you. And then if you just open your mind to those possibilities, and you become coachable, and you become willing to take help, man, that's huge, especially for leadership. Because every great leader, every great sports player, has mentor, has a coach, has someone to help build them up. So I think that's the biggest thing is just helping people become aware.
Mhm. No, indeed, that's powerful. Even when I met you and I found about your program, it was, in the midst of kind of transition from COVID. I moved to a new city, new job, you weren't allowed to go many places, right? And, the mental health piece, has been a topic of conversation everywhere, and as a male and a black male, I really kind of learned like, hold on, this needs to be talked about. Even if you don't sign up for a program, you need to be aware and figure out how are you going to get through this because COVID has literally, flipped our worlds upside down. So curious to know kind of what are you seeing from either clients or in society. How crucial is it for people to be at least trauma informed or to be aware as we get used to this new normal where mental health really has to be something that's on the forefront of our minds.
There was a lot of layers to that question.
Sorry about that.
So, so
Yeah.
yeah. So let me think which piece I want to answer to where I want to speak to first. The world is full of people that experience things both positive and negative. Um, and I think as a society, we've done a really good job of learning how to deal with the positive experiences. You know, like when everybody scored, like when the touchdown was scored, everybody claps. Like we
Yeah.
get this part, and I think that the other side is how do we learn to deal with the other side of things? You know what I mean? And being trauma informed is understanding that some things that might not seem traumatic to some people will be traumatic to others, and people are triggered. People are sensitive, and understanding the effects of trauma will lead us, I think, to a world with better understanding of each other because we've all got our own things going on, and if we can learn to look at people instead of saying what's wrong with you and start saying, well, what happened? What happened with you? And I think that when we get to that place, we'll ultimately be living in a more, a better tomorrow. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the necessary things.
Correct. And Cleveland, I don't know about you, but I feel like when people in society hear the word trauma, it sounds negative, right? You never want to put yourself in a negative situation to say, I have trauma that I have to deal with or that I need to identify. So I like how you stated that is not what happened to you, but how are you recognizing that and doing something? So kind of in our closing thoughts, I mean, what words of encouragement would you give our listeners, to get a new perspective and look at dealing with trauma and at least, if it's not a program like yours, but just being more self-aware, how can they kind of redefine themselves and how they look at mental health and trauma differently?
I think it starts off with just being kind to yourself. I think number one, and things happen, and we are far from perfect. And showing yourself that self kindness, and just to be like, okay, you know what, these things happen to me and they affect me this way. This is me in my world, and it's an ever going evolution. you're a living, thinking, transforming person at all times, and your process of healing over time is it's not going to look the same day to day. And just be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself, and always just do your best. Put your best foot forward.
Excellent, excellent. And definitely there's no age for that, right? Whether you're 5 years old or 50, that's a universal thing that we don't talk about enough and we need to. And I truly believe with the work you're doing, Cleveland, I mean, you could have just handled it and dealt with it yourself, but the work you're doing is truly impactful. I truly believe it's world class. Keep up the great work. And man, super excited for you. And let our listeners know what's the best way they could get a hold of you, and we'll put your information in the show notes for everyone as well.
The best place to get in contact with me is on Instagram. Look me up at Cleveland H Fitness. So that's Cleveland, the letter H Fitness.
Yeah, and I warn everybody. I mean, you start looking at Cleveland's Instagram. I mean, you be in your office or at home, and you just want to start punching things and get a workout in. So, I love your page. I love the work you're doing. It hypes me up. You're doing a great job, Cleveland. And thank you so much for spending time with us on the World Class Leadership Podcast. We'll talk to you soon.